Hello and welcome. I am Excellent and this is my channel. Today we're going to talk about 11 things about Ouija boards that you might not know about. This is going to be a video that Rob probably doesn't watch, but we are. So let's get started. If you are not subscribed, please do so. It's completely free and helps my channel. If you would give this video a thumbs up, that helps my channel as well. And I've started a new Etsy store. I will put the information below. And if you feel like going around and checking it out, that'd be great. Let's talk about the Ouija board, shall we? Since Halloween is just around the corner, what better time to talk about the Ouija board, as there will be many people pulling theirs out and getting pretty spooked pretty soon. The Ouija board has often been dismissed as just a seasonal party trick, a sleepover staple, where friends would get around, usually preteen girls, and ask substantial questions like, is Jonathan going to think I'm cute? Who will I marry when I grow up? You know, the things that really matter. But the fact is that the Ouija board has a long and compelling spooky history. It was mass marketed during the so-called talking boards era that was the Victorian seances. Ouija has enjoyed wild popularity over the years, despite the fact that it is spooky and there are many stories of the danger that comes with the Ouija board. If you've been listening to my videos this month, you've heard mine. The reputation is that it can be downright demonic. So I assume that we're all aware of how a Ouija board is set up. But if you're not, here's the thing. The center of the board displays the full alphabet in two arched rows, a straight row of numbers, 0 through 9, and beneath that, the word goodbye spelled out in all caps. And in the upper corners of the board are the prompts yes and no. There are no firm rules or scoring or anything. It's just place 2 fingers lightly on the teardrop-shaped pointing device, set atop the board, and ask your questions. Within time, the board will respond by spelling out an answer. If there is no response, wait and try it again. Beyond that, the inner workings of a Ouija board are pretty shrouded in mystery. So, the Ouija board has been around forever. A trademarked name, both referring to the classic Spirit World game, was sold by Hasbro, the toy company. That's why up until recently you were able to get it at Walmart, Target. But there were generic versions as well. They were called spirit boards or talking boards. It has its roots in the spiritualism, which is a religious movement that was fashionable amongst the wealthy and the upperly mobile classes in both the United States and Europe during the mid to late 19th century and through the 1920s. In many aspects, spiritualism wasn't all that different than mainstream Christianity. Spiritualists went to church on Sundays, they sang hymns just like everybody else, but it's what they did on the evenings during the rest of the week that set them apart. One of the core beliefs of spiritualism is that spirits of the dead can and are very eager to communicate with the living, aided by tools like talking boards. Dialogues between the living and the dead were facilitated by mediums and at organized spirit chat sessions. For years, seances had little social stigma attached, like they would today. This was particularly true following the Civil War because it devastated families, and they were desperate to establish closure with loved ones, many of them whose bodies were never returned and they were buried in unmarked graves. According to a popular legend, even Mary Todd Lincoln, who didn't identify as a spiritualist but was friendly with one well known medium, hosted a seance at the White House in an attempt to contact her son, who had died from typhoid fever when he was 12 years old. Communicating with the dead was very common back then, and it wasn't seen as bizarre or weird. The Ouija collector and the historian Robert Murch told the Smithsonian in an article in 2013 that it was hard to imagine that now that we look back at that, what we think now is, uh, why are you opening the gates of hell? It was Baltimore investor Elijah Bond who filed the patent for the modern day Ouija on behalf of the Kennard Novelty Company in 1891. He envisioned this mass produced spirit board and parlor game with the standard letters that the talking board had and the pointing device. Customers who were not familiar with seances or spiritualism really had just a vague idea of what a Ouija board did or how to use it. So the cryptic instructions written by Kennard employee William Fuld didn't really help that much because they read, "The Ouija is a great mystery, and we do not claim to give exact directions for its management. Neither do we claim that at all times and under all circumstances it will work perfectly well, but we do guarantee that with reasonable patience and judgment, it will more than satisfy your greatest expectations." But none of that really mattered. The boards were selling like hotcakes. It was the ultimate moneymaker. People didn't care why it worked, they just wanted it to work. In 1901, Fold took over production of the board and marketed it in a way that kind of pulled it away from spiritualism while pushing the supernatural aspect of it, but it was totally safe to use. And it was called Mystique. The Fold Company's Ouija was immensely popular from the 1910s through the 1930s. Times were changing. People from all walks of life were just grasping for something, anything to believe in. And although Fold died in 1927, as legend has it, he fell off the roof of a new factory that, coincidentally, a Ouija board had instructed him to build. His estate maintained control of the Ouija until 1966. After enjoying massive success under the Fold Company, the 1966 acquisition of the Ouija board by powerhouse Parker Brothers led to even greater success, and in 1967, 2 million Ouija boards were sold, topping the sales that year of longtime Parker Brothers favorite Monopoly. Despite a fair amount of religious holdouts, everyone seemed to own a Ouija board, and they had puffed up tales telling about what had happened to them while they were using the Ouija board. It was advertised as a mystifying oracle, saying that it was just a harmless party game, maybe a bit spooky, probably a bit silly, and a departure from strategy, trivia, and fake paper money. Most folks didn't even know about the board's roots in the spiritualism movement. They just owned one because their friends owned one. So it was just a good after dinner party game. What's a little bit of a demon after dessert, after all? So, about that paddle shaped pointer thing with a tiny magnifying glass in the middle, while the folks at Hasbro refer to it as the message indicator, it's formally known as a planchette. If you've listened to my channel for any time, you know that I have always referred to it as a planchette. And that is from the French for little plank. And it actually predates the Ouija board by several years. Along with smelling salts and spirit trumpets, planchettes were a staple of the Victorian seance craze. The Victorian era was off the charts weird, wasn't it? Every enlightened household had one. The bigger and more ornate the planchette, the better. Unlike the smaller mass-produced planchettes that come with Ouija boards and are primarily used for pointing out letters, early planchettes were caster-supported. They were heart-shaped wooden devices outfitted with pencils and used for automatic writing, also known as psychography? Let's call it that, which is writing without the use of your conscious mind, basically. Maybe something like a otherworldly person dictating it. Despite enjoying mainstream popularity over the decades, the Ouija board has long been considered taboo by religious groups. During the height of their popularity in the free-willing 1960s, talking boards were akin to dirty magazines and Elvis Presley records. Oh my. In strict and devout households, Elvis, keep that pelvis far from me. That is, they were shameful, uncouth, and potentially dangerous objects to be, well, hidden under the bed or stashed inside that rarely used chutes and ladders box, lest one's Bible thumping mother confiscate it. The Roman Catholic Church has been particularly critical of the Ouija, which, by the way, explains why Rob probably won't be listening to this. Dating back to 1919, when Pope Pius X warned the faithful to stay away from parlor games associated with the occult. The website Catholic Answers refers to the far from harmless use of Ouija boards as a form of divination or seeking information from supernatural sources. P.S. I'm not a fan of a Ouija board. Won't have one at my house. Have had scary experiences. I can get on board with this. It's likely that there are more than a few well adjusted adults out there who were ratted out as kids for dabbling with the Ouija board at slumber parties. My own children did as well. While probably no fun at the time, there's no denying that divination is a pretty cool excuse for getting grounded for a month. So, movies based on or revolving around real life table games are a pretty rare breed. They have Clue, of course, which is a great movie, and they had Battleship, which was an okay movie. Even Jumanji is supposed to be based on a table game, right? Well, the Ouija board is that notable exception. One of the game's earliest big screen appearances was in 1944, and it was in a haunted house romance movie. I mean, because what two things go to better together than that? And it was called The Uninvited. But The real trouble came in 1973. Sales were still riding high, and Parker Brothers had acquired the game. However, that game played a central role in a movie that was literally traumatizing people, having people leave the theater, having people throw up. You know what I'm talking about? The board only appears on screen briefly in the Academy Award winning film The Exorcist. It was more than enough to get people to take a second look at that mystifying oracle that was collecting dust on a bookshelf. After all, the board did serve as a conduit for an unknown entity slash imaginary friend named Captain Howdy to make contact with 12-year-old Reagan McNeil. She said, I ask the questions and he gives the answers. She explains to her mom. Of course, just weeks later, Reagan is pushing her babysitters out of the window and projectile vomiting on priests while saying things that would make even the saltiest sailor blush. Sales bottomed out. People were scared. It had gone from, isn't this fun? Let's do this after dessert, to, oh my god, we're talking to demons. In addition to numerous movies of varying quality, the Ouija board has inspired various works of literature. Or to be more precise, Ouija boards have produced letter by painstakingly letter actual books. The most infamous Ouija generated book is called Jap Heron, a novel written from the Ouija board, and it was published in 1917. The novel's author, guess what? Sit down. Mark Twain, or rather, the ghost of Mark Twain. And it was transcribed by a medium whose name was Emily Grant Hutchings. The novel was published 7 years after Twain died and was a little bit popular thanks to the vast popularity of the Ouija boards. Now, about the Ouija boards, there are do's and don'ts. On Ouija safety, it is said that it should be taken with disproportionately large grain of salt. There are steps to be taken to ensure that you commune with the dead successfully and not attract demon entities, which, those are good rules for life in general. They include lighting white candles around the board, they attract good vibes, and cleaning the board before each use. Then use a bundle of sage. Don't use Windex to clean the board, by the way. It's also important, obviously, to keep a close eye on the planchette and always move the planchette to goodbye when you've had enough. It comes time to end the game. Always move it to goodbye. Without properly closing the door, the spirit's going to linger. It's also, just plain rude. In terms of timing, a fall or winter evening, and the closer to midnight, the better. That is the optimum time for chatting with the other side. They're bored, summer's gone. What else are they going to do? And then there are don'ts, no-nos. You are using the board in your home. I mean, where else are you going to use it? Although, I guess a graveyard. Using a board while tired. Using a board while under the influence. And using the board alone. I think that that's something probably everybody knows. The part about never use a Ouija board alone. But why do you think you shouldn't use it when you're tired or you've been drinking? Well, that lowers your protection. It's also crucial to avoid asking annoying questions or spelling out curse words when in a conversation. I mean, really. And whatever you do, make sure you do not trust a spirit. It would be easier to detect a lie via body language, but it's also a bad idea to ask a spirit to show itself, even if they pinky swear that they look exactly like Patrick Swayze did in Ghost. Do not ask them to show themselves, which to me feels like common sense. So, lastly, scientifically speaking, what is responsible for the movement of the planchette across the board? Well, this phenomenon is called the ideometer effect. Ideo comes from idea or cognitive representation, and motor relates to the movement of your muscles, calling the phenomenon a way for your body to talk to itself. Now, this is what's being said. In the case of a Ouija board, your brain may unconsciously create images and memories when you ask the board questions. Your body responds to your brain without you consciously telling it to do so, causing the muscles in your hands or arms to move the pointer to the answers that you, unconsciously, want to receive. Over the years, people were paid to research this. Research has determined that the ideomotor effect is closely tied to subconscious awareness, and that its effect is maximized when the subject believes that he has no control of his movements. Paradoxically, the less control you think you have, the more control your subconscious mind is actually exerting. This is also very scary to me. What do you think? This is where the Ouija board's triangular pointer comes in. The planchette makes it easier to subconsciously control your muscle movements because it focuses and directs them even while you believe you aren't in control of them. It's why the planchette seems to move more effectively when multiple people are using it at once. It frees everybody's minds to subconsciously generate creepy Ouija board answers together. Now, I'm confused about that because I can see that if one person is using it, I mean, I guess I can see that, then they would get the answers they wanted. But if there's 4 or 5 of you sitting around, wouldn't there be multiple answers that everybody wanted? I don't know. Apparently, the subconscious mind is a powerful thing when it comes to Ouija boards. So, keep that in mind. Do you use a Ouija board? Have you ever used a Ouija board? What do you think of Ouija boards? Is it opening the gates of hell? Is it letting a demon in? I have had experience, and like I said, that video has been earlier this month. I had two actually. I think that it's best not to use one, but if you enjoy it, please let me know. leave a comment below. Good night.